Hey, everybody, how do you live your life? Joel, how do you live your life? What do you base your life on?
You're going to love this, Jeff. But because we're talking about it today, we do live our life according to the Ten Commandments.
Ooh, great answer. Hey, well, this is not 10 men, but 2 men and a Bible. I'm Jeff.
It's too bad it's not 10 million men.
Maybe one day it will be.
Or 100 million men, 100 million men in the United States believing that how we ought to live our life is according to the Ten Commandments.
That would be a wonderful poll.
You know, what I think is wonderful about the Ten Commandments is the Ten Commandments are there for us, not against us.
Right.
And if we could just get that through our head and through our understanding, and so that we wouldn't rebel against them so much. I mean, there's no question we're human beings and we rebel against everything, but so we do want to as human beings, we want to rebel against God's word or God's Ten Commandments. But if you study them and understand them, you see them as God's love rather than God's looking for a way to punish us.
And they're more freeing. In fact, if you look at 10 Commandments like a fence, take children, okay? Let's say that you live on a house by a cliff, and all around the house is a cliff. So you put up a fence. If you have no fence, the kids will huddle together away from the edges and play there. Once you put up a fence, they have actually more room to run and play, and not less. And I think that's the 10 Commandments have that effect too, that if we live by them, we actually have more room to play. And because God wants us to be more free, which really relates to what the reason we're bringing up the 10 Commandments today for a topic isn't so much that we're going to go through the 10 Commandments themselves, but as a whole, we are going to talk about a bill that I'm working on. It's a bill that I already have legislators who have enthusiastically said, sign me up with you. That would be co-sponsoring. So I'll be the sponsor of this bill that is going to require that the 10 Commandments are hanging on the public school walls again, the classroom walls of North Dakota.
We used to have that. I mean, they used to be in every single room.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the used to be part, because let's talk about that a little bit. Because already, if you might be thinking one way or another, you might be thinking, oh, that's great, or you might be thinking, oh, that's wrong, or oh, that's unconstitutional.
Yeah, it's unconstitutional.
So we're going to deal with that right away. First of all, hanging the 10 Commandments on a wall, first of all, does not force anybody to be a Christian, nor is that the intent. So let's get that out of the way right away. And by the way, the history of the 10 Commandments in our country never did that either. Our country has never constitutionally forced anybody to be a Christian. Maybe there was an individual or a pastor or a Christian out there that did that.
Yes, yep.
But
not as a nation.
But we have never as a nation forced anybody. In fact, by basing our governance on the 10 Commandments, what we really did is we freed up people. And so I would propose to say with great confidence that a Muslim, a Buddhist, and even an atheist would be more free in a country that is based on the 10 Commandments than in any other country. The freedom that you have to not be bothered by your neighbor,
not be killed by your neighbor,
not be killed by your neighbor, not stuff stolen, not to have them talking behind your back, not even to want your stuff. Try that in Iraq or Iran. It's not going to work out very well for you. But our nation was built on the 10 Commandments. So where's the proof of that? Well, I know we were talking earlier with our historical expert, Jason, our tech guy, and he was sharing about the Mayflower Compact. Even before they got off the boat, these men and women, the pilgrims and businessmen, all agreed on this compact, which was based on the 10 Commandments. That went forward then, if we fast forward to the state constitutions before the federal constitution. Okay, the 13 states that we're all familiar with, if we know our history, every single one of them, I believe, if not all of them, it was 12 out of the 13.
It was 12 out of 13, and then the 13th one is very similar to what you're about to say.
Okay. So there, anyway, the vast majority, and I think it was all of them in some way, required that if you were going to hold public office, you had to confess faith in not just any God, but the Lord Jesus Christ.
Right.
And
it had to be with Jesus.
And they're all written a little bit differently. Some were more Protestant, a couple were more Catholic, but some of them were as explicit enough, like Delaware, to even say that you had to believe in the God of the 66 books, the Old Testament, the New Testament. I mean, it was very clear it was the God of the Bible, and then that transferred out to be what they considered natural law through our Creator, who endowed us with the three inalienable rights, all have their roots in the Bible and the Ten Commandments.
Yep.
And by the way, just a little fun trivia for those of you that are either really excited about this thought right now or really nervous, or maybe some of you are really angry. But we did become the most prosperous nation in the world.
Because we followed the Ten Commandments.
Right, and the most free. So these guys that put this all together, they weren't idiots. And I think there is because their wisdom was coming from God. They were building their nation.
They understood that these commandments help a country. They don't hurt a country.
Right.
In fact, there's nothing in these commandments that hurt a nation. In fact, all of them help a nation.
And I think most of us, most of you listening even, would probably agree that our country, and yes, even our state, has really morally been spiraling down faster and faster all the time. I mean, to the point where we're just plain denying reality itself now. I mean, we're believing fake science so much that we're willing to say it is better to raise a child and chop off their body parts that have nothing functionally wrong with them. There's no disease, and taking away a very integral part of their future adult life and basically wrecking it for the rest of their life. And
because they'll never have children.
Yeah, and they'll never have children. They'll never enjoy or experience the intimacy of marriage.
Can you imagine the lawsuits that are going to be coming towards mom and dad?
I hope they are. I mean, and the doctors and these people that are peddling this. It's not just fake science. I would say it's evil science.
It is.
It's so. I mean, you know,
there's a real possibility that these lawsuits will go against the legislators that make up these stupid laws. You know, or the governors that sign the laws.
Well, I can't imagine
the judges that
what we're in for.
Them.
But irregardless, even without that issue, the influence of just having the Ten Commandments hanging on the wall, it's real because there is a real God behind it. But look at it as a worldview. It's not a force forcing you to be a Christian. It's a worldview that our founders believed would form a great nation, and they were right, and it did. So I like to use this analogy. For those of you that are thinking, well, that's not fair because why that religion and not another religion? And I'm going to explain where that's at in the courts too. But this analogy, I think, is helpful. If you were going to take a 9/16 bolt off an engine, would it be best? Which tool would you use? Would you use a hammer, maybe a plier, or would you use a 9/16 wrench?
Or a hammer and a screwdriver?
Hammer and screwdriver. Is that experience talking there?
Yeah. I mean,
what's the closest thing we got here? Just bang on the edges with that.
Or a 9/16 wrench.
You're welcome to use any one you want, but the best tool is the 9/16 wrench, right? So when you use that, are all your neighbors going to come after you and say, "Hey, that's not fair to the plier"? You know, well, no, it's a tool. And that's the way the Ten Commandments hanging on the walls are. It's a tool. It's a worldview. It's it's no different than hanging an inspirational thought on the wall. except for the fact that we know and believe that because of proven history, that when you have the 10 Commandments in the room, at the very least, it reminds children that it does matter how they behave, even in secret. The real test of a moral and ethical person is how they behave when they don't have to behave that way, or when they're alone, right? So they're going to be less likely to steal from their friends because the 10 Commandments are hanging on the wall. They know that God sees them there as well. And so now,
I've always wondered why the atheist is so afraid of this. Why are they afraid that a child would hear that there is a God? What are they afraid of?
I think it's their own resentment toward God, their hatred. I think that they like to think that they don't believe there is a God, but the truth is they're really mad at God.
Yeah.
I'd say for the vast majority, I can't express for everybody, but I do believe that in the study I've had. I've had atheist friends, I still do, and it seems that there is a bitterness toward God for an unfulfilled something in their life, and because of that, that comes out in.
You think that was Stephen Hawking's problem? You think he was just angry with God?
I do.
Or how his situation?
Christopher Hitchens, a lot of those famous ones, I think they had just a buried hatred. But all of us really, if you strip away the grace of God and you take away the things that are intended to be a blessing for us and you push them out, you're going to find a hatred toward God in all of us. And it is only because we have received the blessings of His grace, His provision and protection. But anyway, back to the 10 Commandments. I want to make everybody aware of this as far as the literal trail here in North Dakota. This bill, which I said already has a few co-sponsors and it will have more, will also get a bill number. And I don't have that today. Now, by the time you're hearing this, which is, I think, December 29th, is it?
Yeah, 29th.
Somewhere around there.
28th and 29th, yep.
Though it may have a number. There will be a bill number with this bill.
Jason is considering getting that number if you get that number to him and putting it on the title
look
here.
At our Facebooks. I'm sure I'll put it on my Facebook. Jason will put it out on the Two Men and the Bible Facebook.
2 Men and the Bible.
And he's great at. We've got Rumble and we've got other things too. But
so
Joel
what is this going to say? What is it?
Okay,
what is mainly going to say?
So the basically, I'm not going to read it all.
No,
obviously it has a 10 Commandments,
15 there probably.
But it does say this: a board of a school district shall display the 10 Commandments in each classroom. There you go. And it describes what the display must be, the size. It has to be, the 10 Commandments have to be the central focus of the poster. It has to be a certain size and readable font. And this is a direct copy, by the way, of the Louisiana law. Louisiana was the first state. I wish North Dakota could have been, but Louisiana was the first state to actually get it into a law. And of course, it went to court. If this passes both the House and the Senate and the governor's desk, it too will go to court. But here's the bad news and the good news. Okay, first of all, before I get to that, I think what I say, guys, there are 9 states: Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, Utah, Arizona, Georgia, South Carolina, West Virginia, and now North Dakota. So that's 9 states that have either tried it or are trying it. And
they're working on getting it accomplished.
So Louisiana was the first one that successfully got it into law. It went to court. Okay, here's the bad news. It got not struck down, but it got put what do they call it?
Injunction?
It's an injunction. There's a certain type of injunction. Where did I put that? Anyhow, I guess injunction's good enough. It was based on
down there. I think that's where you were reading.
Preliminary injunction. Okay, and that's waiting for a permanent injunction, possibly. But here's the good news. Well, okay. That injunction basically stopped the effect of it by a judge based on what's called the Lemon test. Lemon is not, it's the name of a person. It's not like car being a lemon. But Lemon versus Kurtzman in 1971, they came up with the Lemon test to determine whether something violates the Establishment Clause of the Federal Constitution. That had 3 prongs in the Lemon test. One was the purpose prong, which said it had to be secular purpose. 2, the effect prong that said it could not advance or inhibit religion. That's the effect prong. And then the 3rd prong was the entanglement prong. It could not be excessively entangling government with religion. So you had purpose, effect, and entanglement. Those 3 prongs made up what was called the Lemon test. So this injunction that was put on the Louisiana law was based on the Lemon test. Well, here's the good news. That's bad news, because that's not, that means that, well, they'll probably do that to North Dakota as well. However, the Supreme Court just recently,
United States Supreme Court,
yes, overturned the Lemon test. Can no longer be used in court as a basis for determining
what can and cannot be.
Yeah, in
law.
the Establishment Clause of the Constitution. So you cannot say something violates the Establishment Clause of the Constitution anymore based on the Lemon test. That's really good news, because that's not just good news for the 10 Commandments bill here in North Dakota, but it is good news for
a host of
things that, because the reality is, okay, let's dial back again historically to, we talked about the Mayflower Compact, we talked about all the state constitutions required,
original state constitutions.
And by the way, that remained, they were not in violation of really even the federal Constitution. They did not consider that even a violation when the federal Constitution came. How do we know that? Because all of these states remained that way all the way, some of them clear into the 1900s. And they were voluntarily giving it up. It wasn't because they said, well, you're being unconstitutional. So even to this day, we are still free as states. We still have the right as a state to establish religious codes, religious things.
Well, you're right. I mean, I go back to the late 50s and all through the 60s in school. We always had the 10 Commandments up on our walls.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not talking 200 years ago. We're talking less than 100 years ago. And, well, what does that get us back to? 60 years ago?
Yeah.
And so, we need to understand that they were just recently taken down. And as far as the United States is concerned.
Yeah, in fact, good point. In 1980, the court ruled that a Kentucky law, so they did have the 10 Commandments out in 80, and that was based on the Lemon test as well. So that after 1980, and then there's a guy in our church that's been doing some research on the impact of removing the 10 Commandments from the schools. And
it's made a huge difference.
Yeah, and he's got graphs on crime and suicide and teen pregnancies and theft and everything else. Guns, yeah. It's just
think of when I went to school, we had guns in our pickups, rifles hanging in from our window.
And you had to go to the office for having gum under your desk.
Yeah. No one even thought about guns being a problem in our day.
Right. You might drive home from school and see something you want to shoot, and that's just kind of how it was. But so anyway, folks, that's it. That's the 10 Commandments bill. That's kind of the first one we're talking about as.
So what it's really about is that Jeff and others and me would like to see the 10 Commandments posted once again in our classrooms, and every classroom having it from K through 12.
Yeah.
And we'd love to see it in colleges as well. But for right now, it's K through 12.
Yeah, it's K through 12 right now.
And that's the goal here. But the goal is to let people see how actually free we can be as a nation, and how blessed we could be if we actually did these 10 commandments. Our nation would be blessed beyond imagination.
And guess what? Kids learn better. This is just statistically proven that kids learn better when they have moral character. Moral character is one of the biggest factors. I mean, even the Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom and knowledge. Just the fear of God. And by fear, we don't mean, petrified but we do mean the highest respect on the scale.
Considering God to be
another thing
worthy of honor.
We really want to encourage you is to follow this bill and really follow a lot of, once every other year, North Dakotans, we get a chance to be involved directly in the laws of our state. And we are upon the next 4-month season of that. I really encourage you to consider finding a bill or 2 or 3 that matter to you. And I hope this is one of them. And follow it, and not only read about it and share it, but come to Bismarck. When you follow when you find out the number of this bill, follow when the committee hearings will be. And maybe you've never been to a committee hearing in Bismarck, but believe it or not, folks, the citizens make one of the biggest impacts in shaping our laws. You think it's the legislators, but really it's the citizens who voted for them, and it's the citizens who influence the legislators, and that's you. And just by your being in the room, most people I talk to are willing to go to Bismarck to a committee, but they're just petrified at the idea of speaking, and that's okay. If you can speak to this, even just 1 minute, and frankly, it's counterproductive to have a bunch of people trying to give 10-minute speeches. Yep. There should be one main one, which we have, but then a bunch of little ones following that. And all you have to do is get up there and just say, hey, my name is such and such from blank, North Dakota, and I am for this bill for this reason. And then thank you. Go and sit down. 1-2 minutes. But even if you can't do that, the fact that you're sitting in the crowd and the 14 legislators who are in that committee, or if it's on the Senate side, it'll be 7. They're impacted by the citizens. We all are. We're real people, men and women who were elected by you. And so therefore, I encourage you to follow this bill and try to find out by following it on the computer, on the government website. It'll tell you when the committee is, and there's not always a lot of notice with that. It's hard to predict. I can't tell you now, but there will be a committee hearing. And if this committee can give a due pass, then it has a higher, and by due pass, I mean, 8, 9, out of 14 people, it'd be nice to see a 10-4 is what I'm looking for.
Or a 14-0.
14-0 would be great, but ultimately a 10-4, when you hit double digits, it seems to have a nice impact on the floor where all the legislators vote ultimately for it, because it has to do it twice. To make a law, it takes 2 chambers. And
it's quite a process, everybody.
It's quite a process.
Yeah. First to present the bill, then it goes through legal channels to find out if it's even legal at all to put forth.
Yeah. So it has to go through the House with committee hearings of the public. If it passes ultimately on the floor, then it goes to the Senate, starts all over.
Yep.
And if it passes there, it goes to the governor's desk and he signs it. And then after that, not all the laws, but this one most certainly will be challenged in court. And then it'll go through the court process. But I already shared with you the good news that no longer can they use the Lemon test.
Yep.
So North Dakota, really, it's up to us as citizens. And that's the way it ought to be. This Constitution was made for a moral people. North Dakota, are we still going to be one of the few states who are going to retain our morality and base it on a Christian worldview? Do you believe that can happen again? It has happened before. We believe that it can happen again, and it needs to.
It can, and I hope it will, because we have enough people, honestly, that believe that this is good. There are those people who think that this is going against church and state. It is not. Not even a little bit. So,
yep, it's a Christian worldview. Nobody's being forced to be a Christian,
right?
But this is the best worldview, the best tool, and it's just one of many.
9/16 wrench.
That's a big one
when needed.
Yeah. So get out there and vote for the 9/16 wrench.
Yes.
God bless you all. Have a great day.